Welcome to the fifth session of Effective Church Councils. Today we're going to talk about communicating with the congregation the decisions that the leadership team has made. And it just seems like too often that once especially a major decision has been made within the council, it seems as if we fail to communicate that decision effectively to the congregation. So how can we communicate that to the church? And if we look at Acts chapter 15, where there was a major conflict within the early church about whether Gentiles had to be circumcised or not, and Paul and Barnabas and people from the Antioch church went to Jerusalem and they talked about that. When they made their decision, the leadership there sent a letter back to the church, and they sent representatives from that church to the Antioch church to explain their decision. And as they used written communication and oral communication, it's important for us today to follow that same pattern, that we write things down and send it out, and we also have people tell the entire congregation, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, and why we're going there. And in today's world, we can also use a digital format to continually put stuff out about what the church is doing and how we're moving forward. When we communicate to the church, we need to make sure that we explain why. Why are we doing this? Why have we initiated this change? Why have we initiated this new ministry? And we need to push people to the mission. This is why we're doing it. And we also need to communicate how we got to that decision and what we're going to do. And one of the important things that we need to do that we often forget to do is make the ask. We have to ask the congregation to get involved, to invite someone, that this is how you can share your gifts, your abilities. This is how much money we need people to give. So we need to make the ask. Some tips on how to communicate this to the congregation. When we do it from the stage, when we do it orally, we need to make sure that that person can speak well. You may think that maybe the pastor should do that. Well, maybe the pastor shouldn't be the one who's communicating that. But the person who speaks there should be able to speak well, one who is respected by the congregation, one who is fairly mature in their faith, because if there's any opposition to the proposal, that person's probably going to be the lightning rod and receive that complaints. And so it should be someone who can handle themselves and speak well, not only to a group of people, but also one-on-one. And when we share that, any information, we need to share it with the congregation at least 3 weeks in a row, at least. Because not everyone comes to every Sunday, week after week. And if we do it at least 3 weeks, then we're going to hit most of the people. Invariably, whenever we share it, and we share it as well as we can, as often as we can, someone's going to come up and say, I didn't know that. I didn't hear about that. Why didn't you communicate that better? And that's just going to happen. And whenever that does happen, it's time to smile and say, we're sorry that we didn't get to communicate that with you. And so then you just share it again with that person, and then be sure to make the ask. This is what you can do. How can you help? How are you willing to help move this ministry forward? And so we make the ask, we communicate written and oral on the website, Facebook, many different ways. And we just have to keep getting it out. One pastor said that every problem that he came across in the church was a communication problem. And I think that's probably very true. Somehow we miscommunicated, or people didn't hear right. And so we just got to keep putting the word out so that we can move together to accomplish God's mission here at this time. I want to wrap up this session with just talking a little bit about change theory. And change theory deals with the fact that none of us likes change. Actually, when it comes to change theory, change is an external force that happens upon us. I have no say over the fact that things are different. I didn't ask for coronavirus. I didn't ask for COVID-19. I didn't ask for all this, but it happened. None of us did. It just happened. It's a change, an external force upon us. Now, there's the next part of that is then the transition. Now, the transition is an internal force within us. It's our response to that external change. And that's the part that really no one likes, because now I have to face that change. I have to deal with that. And that's a very uneasy time in our lives. The third part then is transformation. The changes happen. We are internalizing that and dealing with it. Now the transformation is how we come out of that transition based on that change. And really, as Christians, I believe that we should be all about change, transition, transformation based on what Romans 12, 1 and 2 says, that it's through this renewing of our mind that we bring, that God's Spirit works in us and we're to be transformed into this new person. And so really, I think as a church, we should be embracing change rather than ones who stand back. What is it that God wants to do new in our lives and in the life of the church? Now, as we initiate new changes, new ministries, understand that there are different phases that people accept to change it. It's called different ways of adapting. There are those who innovate. They're the ones who come up with the idea. Then there's the early adapters, the ones who quickly say, yeah, that's a great idea. There's the mid-adapters who kind of stand back a little bit and wait to see how things go before they join in. There's the late adapters who wait even longer to join in. And then there's the never-getters. They're the ones who are the naysayers who seem like they're never in favor of the idea. Understand that any one of us can be a never-getter in a different situation, and anyone can be an innovator. It all depends on what that change or that new idea is, how we respond to it. So never expect the whole congregation to accept this change at one time. Different people buy in at different times, and the one who comes up with the idea has to gain about 15% of the congregation, the early adapters, to join in. And once they join in, they'll bring the other people along. And then we can accomplish what God wants to accomplish in His church. So, example, 2020 was a year of change. And we have to wear masks now at this time. And quite honestly, I was not an innovator or an early adapter on that. I was more of a mid to late adapter. But now that I'm seeing things like now, I'm one who will wear the mask over and over. And just look at your congregation. There are people who adapted that very early, and there are still probably some who ain't wearing the mask. So leaders are ones who create change. They're the ones who come up with new ideas. They're the one who moves the congregation forward. And people react to change, and we all react to it slightly different than the other people, but we have to communicate that change so that we can move together as one, because Jesus wants us to be a united church. We may not all agree with it at the same time, but we keep moving forward to accomplishing God's mission for His church at this time. So, I pray God's blessing upon you. May the Spirit clarify what He wants done, and then may we move together as one to accomplish His mission today.